Gandhi, Gandhi, and all of you for coming on this auspicious day. I have a couple of disclaimers. But Manil had actually sent me an email, and I think Pradeep actually forwarded that email to me to say, I didn't know this was Gandhians. I think all of you actually do celebrate Gandhians. But for me, it was a very special day, and I have a disclaimer.
I think the mic has some issue. You can talk without the mic. We can hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
The mic has an issue. Oh, now? Now it's better. Okay. Maybe I need to actually put it a little closer. So the disclaimer is that my mom only remembers Gandhians because I was born on Gandhians. So she only celebrates my birthday today.
Happy birthday.
But remember again, Hindu calendar is different. So for me, she was kind of surprised that, what are you going around talking on your Gandhians? You should be home and celebrating your birthday. I said, well, I'm celebrating with like-minded people, so she was quite happy to hear. So Gandhians is a very special day for me as I was born. It's ironic though, that I have to also send a disclaimer. I think you all have to understand, I'm no Gandhi. Some of the Gandhi's principles which you embody, I think it's very difficult in today's day and age that we would all be able to practice those. Recognizing what we can do and what we cannot is probably the essence of actually starting something new in the modern times. And I think I have to accept the fact that I am no Gandhi. But I'll talk about Gandhi's relevance in the modern time. It's my reflection of how I see it. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for inviting me. Distinguished guests, Anilji, Umarji, Sam, Punita, and the rest of you I may have actually met during our journey together in Ottawa. And it's a pleasure for me to be part of the Mahatma Peace Council because Jack Saab and myself, we got involved, Anil Saab as well, involved when we wanted to establish Mahatma Gandhi's statue at Carleton University. Actually, it wasn't at Carleton University. Some of you actually might even know the story. That was going to be in a peace park. It was in the outside. It's not necessarily. In fact, even before there was some other location. I think the mayor at that time had committed to it. And the way the politics of those days went, that it actually got stuck at the High Commissioner's garage, the statue, for I think more than 2 years. We really couldn't find a place at all until under Dr. Homer's leadership. And I just happened to be at the Board of Governors at Carleton University. We had a Carleton president who was also very interested in Canada-India relationships. We decided to actually start mobilizing our political and social and community power, eventually establishing a Canada-India Center for Excellence at the Carleton University, but at the same time we convinced them to have the Mahatma Gandhi statue at the Canada-India Center would actually support the whole idea of what the Carleton University represented and Canada-India Center represent. So that's how I got involved, and since then I've been able to speak. So it is with both an honor and a privilege to stand before you today to reflect on a man who I do think not only belongs to India, but it belongs to the world. It actually belongs to humanity. There was no real distinction of what Gandhi actually, to whom Gandhi belongs to. A man that's reflected, whose most and all the moral vision continues to guide a world searching for meaning today, justice and the peace. So as we gather here, let us remember Gandhi's simple yet very, very powerful words. Be the change that you wish to see in the world. How many of us can actually do that? Be the change. And those words uttered decades ago still hold the same power. Can we change ourselves? And if we change ourselves, we'll change the world. Perhaps even greater urgency today than what it was so many years ago when he had actually said that. In our complex, and as we just said, in a conflicted world today. So let's reflect on a man beyond his time. Let's talk a few things about that. In fact, I was just driving in and I called Anil and said, so Anil said, do you have a projector? Do you want to actually project some slides? And I said, like Dr. Hoomer, I've spent my 50 years of life being a professor, and always there's something actually going behind it. So today I thought I'd just talk to you guys in a manner so that you can actually even ask me some questions. You guys are far more wise and with reflection on Gandhi philosophy, and so we'll have a dialogue. So let's go back into it. Mahatma Gandhi was born in 1869. That's many, many years ago, in a very small Gujarati coastal town called Porbandar. Bandar is a coastal town, Porbandar. I'm being Gujarati, I'm very proud of that old heritage. A lawyer by training, he became revolutionary by conscience. But that conscience evolved over a period of time. He wasn't necessarily the same Gandhi when he was actually in India, and before that when he went to South Africa. From the dusty roads of South Africa to the village of India, Gandhi transformed the fight for political freedom. But it wasn't necessarily that he sort of started out that way. He was actually wearing, like when one of us wearing a suit. He used to wear his black suit with, of course, this white sort of Oxford collar with those lawyers' outfit. And he used to practice law in South Africa. So it's not the one which you all have actually seen, or the world is actually saying in a non-stop and without very simplicity. That's not how he started his life. He started his life as a lawyer in South Africa. But what he saw started to transform his imagination and what he thought was necessary needed to do. So from the dusty roads of South Africa to the village of India, Gandhi himself transformed the light of political freedom into a moral and a spiritual journey. He taught all of us that ahimsa, or non-violence, is not passivity. This is how people actually see it. That's how the world is completely actually lopsided into it. Ahimsa and non-violence is looked upon today, in today's world, as a weakness, but he never saw that as a weakness. But he saw that was the highest form of courage. And I'll reflect on that one. And that satyagraha, that means truth force, is a weapon stronger than any word. So if you follow the path of truth, you'll always, and that's how the whole idea of Satyameva Jayate had come in. And I'm sure you've heard of all those things before. He believed that moral integrity, not the money, the GDP, how much you actually do trade in between. He believed the moral integrity of a nation will be its truest strength. And today that's what we are lacking across the world. The freedom without justice, a progress without compassion, and ultimately it will be nothing but hollow. And it will not show you any victory. And so Gandhi became more than a leader. He became a light for humanity. In fact, it was Albert Einstein who said that many, many centuries later we'll realize there was a man of that stature who had walked on this planet. So what is the Gandhi's timeless relevance? And I think it's an important thing to reflect on. Many ask, and I actually reflect myself, can Gandhi ideals survive in our modern world of technology, geopolitics, and social media? Almost outrage, in fact. Everything is distorted. And you might actually think differently, but the answer is not only yes, but that his teachings are more vital today than ever if we were to follow what he was actually asking for us to do. The Gandhi's values, let's reflect on it, and I'm sure you all of you. The truth. The whole idea that news can be a fake news is abhorrent to us. We never grew up to think that news is going to be fake news. And that's where the whole philosophy of truth is completely lost. So his first principle was, say no lie, or always speak truth. We just completely lost that whole ground. I don't even know when I listen to a TV today, and I took 2 channels, the same fact is represented in 2 completely different ways, and I'm not even sure which one is the actually truth and which one is a lie. Just to give a political example of it, if you were listening to a Fox News, you will think this is the truth because that guy is actually telling you the truth. But if you turn to another news channel, that's MSNBC or CNN, you'll say the guy is actually lying, and none of us actually has any idea where is the truth. And so nobody is today. Today the spoken language is convenient truth. It's convenient to me, so I will actually say that's the truth. So the first principle was truth. The second principle was simplicity. Well, none of us are simple anymore. We cannot live in a simple life. The simplicity is a principle we cannot avoid at this point. But at the same time, if we can make our life simple, less dependent, less self-reliant, I think we can actually improve our life as well. The third thing was empathy. We need to have an empathy for each other. It has gone out of the window. And self-restraint. Can we be self-restrained when we are challenged? So these are not bound by time or geography. They are still very valid. And they are the foundation of just society and a balanced planet. He foresaw the dangers of material greed, environmental exploitation, and moral decay long before it became the buzzword of a climate crisis. He saw it at that time. He warned us, the world, and he said that very clearly, and I quote. He said the world has enough for everyone's need. The world has enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. And the world has become so greedy today. The single statement made over 70 years ago by Gandhi now echoes in every conversation on sustainability and inequality. Because if we want to sustain ourselves, then we need to actually let go of greed, which we are all into. So what is the global challenge of the 21st century? Let's reflect on a few minutes. As it was reflected, we live today in an age of remarkable advancement. Yet, we are also witnessing alarming level of fragmentation. We're not seeing the cohesiveness between and vision. Our world faces war and displacement, and I don't have to remind anyone of that. In fact, how that's going. Our world faces inequality and justice. We have to actually do the truth and reconciliation and acknowledge the land that actually tells you inequality and justice. Our world also faces ecological collapse because of the way our climate is actually changing. But more important, which actually bothers me, our world actually faces moral fatigue. We are exhausted with the way things are actually going on. We are connected digitally. All of us. Look at this. iPhone, iPad, I have my Apple Watch, everything is, we are connected digitally. But how many of us can actually say that we are connected emotionally at the same time? Our emotions are reflected differently. We cannot even have an open conversation or dialogue without being judged one side or the other side of the equation. So we are very fragmented. We scroll our messages, but we don't see what the message is. It's scrolling. And everybody gets into Facebook. And you want to go to WhatsApp. We just keep scrolling our messages. But we don't see, we post. But we don't pause to reflect. Gandhi would remind us, and I think this is an important concept. Gandhi would remind us that peace is not an absence of conflict. The whole Gaza peace plan is not a peace plan. Because there is no conflict resolution. Conflict is still there. It is the presence of understanding of the conflict leads to the peace resolution. The conflict itself still persists. So whenever Gandhi would say, peace is not Just don't think about peace. When you say it's a peace, no, it's a ceasefire, man. People have stopped fighting with each other, against each other, at each other. Call it as a ceasefire, man. Don't call it as a peace, man, because that offend Gandhi, what he was actually doing. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of understanding. He would urge all of us to confront hatred. We all have hatred. You know, it is. That's what I said in my opening. I'm no Gandhi. I have hatred for many things. But he said, confront that hatred with compassion. I don't carry my hatred on the next day. I will let it go. I will let it resolve my conflict and move on. Confront the violence with dialogue. We actually expand on that as well. But at the same time, confront the injustice with truth. Now let's see in our modern time, I'll give you an example where how the world turned. And I think every one of us actually have witnessed that. The 9/11. It was a barbaric act by every stretch of imagination. None of us would actually say this was something done for the right reason. There were 3,000 plus people killed in New York City for really no reason at all, other than there was obviously hatred. Now just think about it. When that person went to Bush and whispered in his ears when he was sitting in the school, reading a book to a school, I don't know if you guys remember that icon of that time. Had he actually reflected on it, instead of thinking that I need to really punish whoever did this, violence against my population, I want to go after them. Had he actually reflected and said, no, this was a wrong act by somebody. Eye for eye will only make the world blind. I would rather actually turn my other cheek and try to understand what led them to do this barbaric act. They would not have manufactured the war. They would not have gone against Iraq, and they had no weapons of mass destruction. The entire Middle East would not have blown up to what it is today, and the conflict continued and continued. It actually just created the entire stuff. Let me just take you back to Gaza, October 7th. It was no question, all of us have to admit, that it was a barbaric act. Why it was done, that's not a question. Act of killing and taking hostages on October 7th was not an acceptable human behavior. But had the counter forces decided, let's understand where this was coming from, instead of killing 66,000 people in response to whatever 1,200 or 1,300 people were killed. So the whole idea about the ahimsa and whole idea about the violence to be resolved with active dialogue, had we actually followed that principle, we would have seen a different world today. 30 years ago, this is what had happened in 9/11. Today, you think in terms of it, it actually continues because we have this whole inert hatred that we want to act out if somebody is acting against you. And that's how the world has got to where we are. He would urge us to confront, as I say, hatred with compassion. Those were the hated actions. Violence with dialogue and injustice with truth. His teaching challenges us to see humanity as one. And I know some of you are quite a scholar. Vasudeva Kutumbam. That means it was, the world is one family. If we see ourselves as a one family, we would actually let go our hatred. We would let go our anger. So what did he teach so many years ago? Again, the pathways to peace, and why is this so relevant today? Gandhi's pathway to peace was not passive. This is what everybody thinks. It was called an active nonviolence. It's a non-violence, but it's an active non-violence. A courage rooted in truth and love. He believed peace could never be imposed. It must be cultivated through empathy, dialogues, and justice. And justice for all. It cannot be justice for me, it's justice for all. In our world of nuclear deterrence, look at Pakistan and India. and a cyber warfare. That's how much things are going around and fake news. Gandhi's call for peace is not naive, it was actually necessity. That's the only way we can move this world forward. Peace cannot depend on power, and that's the current idea. If I'm powerful, I can be peaceful. Power is seen as a deterrent. Peace cannot depend on power. It must be built on principles, and that's where we are losing. He said, non-violence is the greatest force at the disposal of mankind if it's used with moral authority. Non-violence is the greatest force, and today, violence is the only language we know. Non-violence today can mean diplomacy instead of domination. Today again, we feel domination is the only way to go. If I'm powerful, I can subdue someone. Listening instead of labeling. We label each other. You are this, I am this. Understanding instead of reacting. We are always reacting. The path to peace begins not in parliament or summits. It has become a buzzword. Let's have a summit here. Let's meet here. It's not where peace actually can be developed. It has to be developed within our understanding, within our human heart. And the only way we are actually going to accept the peace between each other if we become as a human and we believe in our humanity. So how do we bridge this divide? And again, one would think, did Gandhi have something to say? I think he had a lot to say. Because you have to understand, Gandhi also lived in a divided India. India was divided, deeply divided, I would add. It was divided on the lines of religion, society, as well as economically. And he foresaw that. He saw diversity of that whole India, not as a weakness, but as the soul of civilization. A lot of his thoughts those days would not really accept a university, even though majority of the Indians actually followed. Quite a few of them did not agree. And that's why there was a lot of hatred, even at the time when the division was happening or independence was happening. He taught that true strength lies in inclusion, not exclusion. And that inclusivity, the whole conversation of today, is something which he talked about then, in almost 70, 80 years ago. That peace cannot survive when prejudices thrive. You need to let go of your prejudices. The 21st century today faces its own divides. We have political polarization. I talked to you about it. The leftists can't talk to the right. We can actually fight an election on political ideology, but we need to govern on the central premises because I need to include both the aisles. You also vote and you also vote. Although you vote for this side and you vote for that side, doesn't mean central government is not going to do it. Today, the political ideology is that this aisle will not talk to this aisle. So down south right now, all three branches of the governance is actually owned by one party. Still, the government is shut down. It tells you that the political ideology has taken over the principles of how we need to actually govern. Racial tension. So many of this divide right now that we see is simply based on racial tension or its non-acceptance of other races, in spite of the fact that we are all one sort of family, one member, one human race. Political polarization, racial tension, and cultural misunderstanding. When you actually begin to see somebody dress differently, somebody talks differently, somebody behaves differently, and somebody celebrates their religious thing differently, we do not necessarily accept that. We want everybody to be a man of the world when we know every civilization that has own positives to give it to the world. What he showed that empathy, humility, and services are not just virtues. This is what I think today we are taking it. They are the building blocks for the peace, and I think we need to embody those today
for us to actually move forward with what, if we want the world to actually move in the right direction. Those were the Gandhi's principles, and they are still completely applied today. So what are our responsibilities? I'm actually talking to the converted people and people who actually believe in it. That's why you've taken this time on this auspicious day to come and listen. So to honor Gandhi is not merely to quote him, and I have done that. It is to live. But can I live like him? No. But what I can do is, what did he live for? I cannot live the way he lived his life. It's impossible for me to do so, and I'll admit to that. I think it may be very difficult for many of you to do the same. But what we are asking, or what he was asking at the time, live for the principles what he actually stood for. And if we can actually even embody some of the principles into our practice. To honor Gandhi is not merely to quote. His message was never abstract. It was profoundly personal. You have to feel. Truth has to be in your words. It cannot be convenient truth. It has to be truth spoken because this is the truth. And you should have courage to say it. Integrity should be in your work. It should not be appeasement to somebody. When you see some of those political meetings shown in TV, and people are praising a leader over leader over leader, and you realize this is nothing but a lie, but it is being spoken. So there's no integrity and there's no truth. Simplicity should be in our consumption. Simplicity should be in our life branding. And kindness should be in our action. And if you are kind to each other, the hatred and anger will start to dissipate. Understanding will start to begin. We'll try to actually have a dialogue with each other to say where we stand for. He urged each of us to be responsible citizens, not just consumers of democracy. We talk about democracy, but democracy is nothing but chaotic way of governance. We know that. We live in those kind of world. But instead of creating that chaotic democracy, contributes to his understanding of how democracy can work. He said the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. He sort of constituted the word seva. And we use that word in many of our conversations. And seva can be in many different ways. Look at Anil is doing the seva. Gurji is that seva. In some small way, I'm doing seva. Punita is doing seva. I simply say them because I don't know their name. And so I'm reflecting on their first name. Seva means you do service to others, not for yourself, to others. That's what Gandhi wanted. Do some service for others. It could be religious, it could be social, it could be political, but do seva. Engage yourself. Have dialogues, have conversation. So we navigate our modern lives, we must ask ourselves today. Do our choices promote peace or provoke division? We have a choice. Do our lifestyles honor sustainability or perpetuate waste? Because the world has finite and we will completely use them. Do our words heal or harm? Very simple directives, but it is so profound. Every act of conscience, no matter how small, moves the world closer to peace. Gandhi envisioned. So those three basic principles: do our choices promote peace or provoke division? Do our lifestyle honor sustainability? And do our words heal or harm? Could actually move to peaceful. Even in those days, he realized the self-reliance and about the environment. Few realized that Gandhi was one of the earliest voices for the environmental ethics. His life was an example of sustainable living. Walking instead of riding, spinning instead of consuming, repairing instead of replacing. All that principle has been lost today. If an anything in our house is broken, you can't repair it because the repair is more expensive than actually buying a new one, so you just throw it away. That's what the consumptionists force us to do. He urged humanity to live in harmony with nature, to consume with mindfulness, and to produce with compassion. Those are profound statements made almost 80, 90 years ago. In an era of climate change, his message rings prophetic now, that this was done almost a century ago. If we wish to protect our planet, we must first purify our intention, what we want to actually do. So what is his global legacy? How am I doing with the time? Pretty good? Gandhi's moral revolutions should inspire the world, and we need to actually think about it, and I'll tell you how I see it. Martin Luther King Jr. in America, Nelson Mandela, of course, in South Africa, Cesar Chavez in the United States, all drew from his principle. Even Obama drew from his principle. When he was asked who would be the person who he'd like to literally spend a dinner with, he said, I wish I had an opportunity to sit with Gandhi, to have a dinner with him, to understand his principles and what he believed in. Even Obama, that all drew from his principles of nonviolence and moral courage. Who in today's world you can see actually has that moral courage to stand on Gandhi's principle? I say there are not that many will come in your mind, because every one of them has his own pitfalls. He became the spiritual architect eventually. Started with a simple human being, but he became spiritual architect of modern human rights. So imagine civil rights has become a word, a buzzword, but he was the actual father of the civil rights. From civil rights to decolonization, his philosophy continues to influence movements for justice, equity, and human dignity. And I think that was the most important message he had to give. He taught that means and end must be aligned. Means and ends must be aligned. That how we achieve our goal is as important as the goals themselves. You wanted to have a peace, but you want to have a peace by killing 60 or 70,000 people, then that's not the goal achieved. You want to have a truth and reconciliation, but after even 10 years of that report, you haven't really moved all the forward, and that goal is not achieved. So the idea about the message that it's not how you achieve the goal, but you get to the goal themselves is most important. That message is still revolutionary. That message was beyond its own time. So what's his living legacy? Gandhi's greatness lies not in statues or holidays, although we did do, because we wanted to celebrate it. And we wanted to have statues and all. But Gandhi's greatness lies in the conscience he awakened in each one of us. I'll digress. The reason why I am involved in Mahatma Gandhi Peace Council. So I'll tell you my personal story then. Although I've done very well for myself, this is not how my life started. I was poorest of the poor in Mumbai. Actually living in slums. That's how my life started. My family had nothing. And we had a place to live. Not far from there was a library. And that was where Mahatma Gandhi used to stay when he used to come to Mumbai. This is in part of the South Bombay. I had no place to study. I was good in my studies. I obviously went through the flying color. But I had no place to study. I became the member. There was no membership fees. This is, you might remember, so bad. Bharatiya Vidya Bhavani Sam, Manipur. Manipur. I beg your pardon. Manipur. I used to walk from my house about 5 kilometers to go to that library and study in that library for my high school, every day. There was a very, very kind lady who was a librarian forever, and she just accepted me. And I was always there. I read as many books I could, my own publicity study books, but I read all the Mahatma one because that was a museum now, because that's what it is. And that's where I started to believe in the principle of that seva is the most important principle of life. I knew that I couldn't be a religious, so I wasn't a dharmi. I was not going to be a very religiously oriented person. That I was going to do a seva through the religious connotation. You know how the seva is, and maybe you hear about this. But I know I got the principle from his reading that I was going to be a karma yogi, like I was going to work as my seva. And one of the things I actually believe got from my reading that the seva would be by curing people or by healing people. But that's how he was teaching, and that's what was the genesis of me. In fact, I was like you, Umar Saab. I was accepted in IIT, and I chose not to go to IIT, and I chose to go in medicine. Although that was a dumb decision. I could have been a billionaire. But I chose to go in medicine because it was the principle of seva, which is what the librarian had taught me. That if you want to actually help out your community, which were very less than privileged, and that's how I took the medicine onto it. So I still carry that whole thing. His message was to do seva, and I became the karma yogi. I rarely even go to temple, even here for that matter. Although I am Hindu, and I'm a practicing Hindu, totally believe in everything it is, but I rarely ever go there. Because it does not necessarily mean, for me, coming here and talking to you is far greater pleasure than I'm going and actually sitting there and praying, because I can do the same thing in my own household. That's what Gandhi actually taught me. Because every one of us has a godly stuff in it, and we have to find those things. So Gandhi's greatness lies not in statues or holidays, but in the conscience he awakened. And he had awakened something almost 55 years ago, 60 years ago. His message is not to be worshipped but lived. Peace is not a destination. It has to be a daily discipline. Justice is not granted. It needs to be practiced. Truth is not proclaimed. It needs to be pursued. He once said, the future depends on what we do today, what we do in the present. So even if what happened yesterday, today is the one which is actually going to start changing tomorrow. He once said, every generation must discover in its own way, in the classroom, in the policies, in communities, and in our personal conduct, your own conscience in how you're going to change tomorrow. Let us not see him as a saint, Gandhi, as a saint. But let us not see him as a saint of the past, but a compass for our moral future. And if you will begin to see that, that's when we'll actually have a better reflection on. So what does it mean to live Gandhi's legacy today? I have reflected on a few things. Had we dealt with the conflict differently, we would have had a different world to live today. Had we dealt with the conflict in India and Pakistan differently, we would have had a different India and Pakistan today. Having now fought 8 wars and we still have no resolution. So conflict persists, there is no peace. What he said then They choose dialogues over division. And I think it is so important today to practice compassion over condemnation. And we are condemning every other person than us. To see every human being, regardless of race, creed, or nation, as part of one shared humanity. In fact, if Gandhi would have been alive today, he would have been probably part of the cancel culture. He would have been, his views would have been considered so leftist, so fanatic, that he would have been considered a woke into it. But if you think about it, that word never existed in our vocabulary. But that's exactly how the polarizations have actually now defined each other's virtues. It means to nurture peace, not as an idea. We have to choose that as a way of life. When he said to see every human being, regardless of race, creed, or nation, as part of our shared humanity, he meant it. He gave his life for it. Because some of his values, as when the non-violent movement was coming to an end and India was getting its own independence, many people did not agree with him then. Many people still don't agree with him now. I don't know how many of you are still following it. There is a movement now in India not to even recognize him as father of the nation. There is right now the conversation in India, not here. We will not talk like that. In India, talking about it because what he did manage to, or why he actually gave so much to create Pakistan, and how much he actually gave into creating Pakistan, and that has all been seen with a very much polarized lens of how India is today. So even if we reflect on it, the world is still very much stuck into those divisions rather than looking at dialogues and reflections. So, I think I'm doing well with that. In my humble ways, what can I ask? Let us each become in our own way ambassador of peace. Now that's a tall word. How would we actually be ambassador of peace? No, I think we should, because when we hear something negative said about India, because we all come from India, or something negative said about Canada, let's not react. Let's reflect where they're coming from. So let's create the dialogues. And is that justifiable comment? So let's look for conversation with enough amount of truth behind it. So is this a fact of life, or is this something generated truth? And that's an important part of life. We need to be stewards of justice, and we need to be a custodian of hope. We always have to think that tomorrow is going to be better. So as I close, let me share Gandhi's gentleman. In a gentle way, he said that. In a gentle way, we all can still shape the world. Not with the nuclear power, but in a gentle way. Let that be our shared mission, to shape the world gently, with love, with truth, with peace. And for me, let Ottawa, Canada, and the global community reflect the light of Gandhi, not in words, but in deeds. Thank you. Appreciate your attention.